Hey everybody, Egnards here. Today we're going to be talking about territory battles. More specifically, we're going to be talking about what it takes to be an officer leading territory battles and how to effectively do that to help your guild out. One of the questions that I get asked most often privately on Discord is from guild officers and guild leaders, seeing if I'll join their Discord server, look over the server, see if it is an effective use of their tools and how to get their players access to information in easy ways. And then the next thing that they ask me about is how to run a TB and how to do it effectively. So that's kind of what our focus is going to be today. If you are an officer in a TB guild, especially one that's still kind of learning how to do things, you're definitely going to get a lot out of this video. If you're just a player, right, thinking about it being an officer, you're definitely going to be getting a lot out of this video. If you are somebody who has no desire to be a territory battles officer, I still urge you to maybe sit and listen to what's going on here. Not everything is going to pertain to you, but my goal and my hope is that after watching, you'll understand how much time it actually takes out of my day and out of your officers' days to run an effective territory battle, so that maybe you'll be more considerate to them when they're tagging you constantly on Discord. And you can always link this video to them if you feel like it'll be helpful to their experience. So, the first thing that we want to note is that Rise of the Empire is very different from LSG or LS Geonosis. The reason why is we're going from a 36-hour phase where platoons become extremely important to combats to a 24-hour phase where a lot of the times you can do these combats before the platoons are even in. However, there is a de-emphasis on beating those battles where they are worth a lot less than in Geo. And the platoons, or operations now, are worth considerably more. All right, so especially as you are at a lower guild level and you may not be able to complete a lot of combats, being able to get platoons in are a really, really strong indicator of if you're going to be able to start things up. And there's a lot of aspects here. The first thing that I kind of want to just touch on really quickly is that there is a free-to-play way to run a territory battle. There is also a pay-to-play way to run a territory battle. I am lucky that my guild does pay for me to have hot utilities. It is a great utility that saves me a ton of time. However, it still takes me between 45 minutes and an hour and a half each day just to make sure things are getting done, and that's with those tools. It is a very time-consuming process. I highly recommend for any guild that is looking to improve their efficiency in territory battles to have 2 or 3 officers who are actively communicating. You don't want your entire officer team doing things. You're going to have players that are more effective in PvP modes. You're going to have players who are more effective at recruiting. You're going to have players who are more effective at the math for Rise of the Empire. If you have 2 to 3 players doing this, you're going to be able to split the requirements. You're going to be able to split the tasks that need to get done between multiple people, which makes life a lot easier for everybody. So the first thing I kind of want to highlight here before we even look at the map, and something that I don't want to spend a lot of time with, is hot utilities. There's a lot of things that you can do with this, including sending out deploy instructions via Discord, which allows you to populate things in a minute that normally take like 10 to 15 minutes to do, especially for the first time each day. But one of the most important tools that I use it for is for making sure my guild can do platoons. Now, I've pre-populated this because you can't really bump around the website without having to refresh your game. I've pre-populated this to our day 6. And our day 6 is the Haven class phase 4 dark side battle, the Kessel neutral phase 4 battle, Ring of Kafrene, which is the day 5 R9 planet for light side, as well as Mandalore, which is the bonus zone. And what this kind of allows me to do is see if it's possible for us to hit all of the platoons. Thankfully, we can hit everything in one day for those first 3 planets. But what you're going to notice when we get down to Mandalore is that there are a lot of empty slots, things that we cannot complete. The nice thing about Rise of the Empire is if you don't get a star, or for a bonus planet, you don't get a crate in one day, you can roll over and do that a second day, which does include being able to platoon things again. So especially for guilds that are kind of just starting out, where even relic 5ing things might seem daunting, you can use strategies where you 2 or 3 day planets to complete platoons in a more effective manner. So things like Princess Nessa, Dr. Aphra, Tarful, Tusken Warrior, will be able to get those on a different day, day 5, and then refresh that on day 6 so that we are able to fully complete those platoons. Again, I don't want to focus on hot utilities. It does make my life easier, but I know that the majority of guilds out there are not using these utilities and are still learning how to do things. So as much as it's a helpful tool, I really want to kind of concentrate on the backbones, and we'll go from there. So let's close this down and get back to the map. Now, the first thing you notice is that our territory battle is pretty much almost done. It is the morning of day 1, right before the phase change into day 2. We use a first, next, last system that I've developed that we'll get into a little bit later when we start to look at Discord and how Discord becomes an effective way to run your territory battle. What you will notice though is even though I put everything on Discord, we do put all of our tags in the game as well. That includes the first tag for our light side battle that lets people know to deploy to 220 million, right? That also includes, and this is where it gets a little bit more difficult, some of the best practices for each battle, right? What teams might be more effective? Do you have limited space to utilize in this respect? So we kind of just put what is the absolute best. For more on that, on our Discord, we do have a territory battles library where we've been cataloging all of the teams that can beat each node. And that's something that I highly suggest funneling players to so that they can look and they can learn what needs to get done. You'll see here, this is our last planet, which means that we met our goal on we got close to our goal on neutral and nobody closed it. Silly them. But this isn't the crux of what is going to lead an effective territory battle. So we're going to actually step over to Discord and take a look at my territory battles announcement channel. This is a channel that should be completely devoid of any conversation where only announcements are popping up. So you want to set this to read only outside of officers within your guild. What you'll notice is that I set up every day at the start of a phase exactly what my expectations are for that day. Day 1 agenda, we're going to be maxing out 3 stars in dark side, 3 stars in neutral, 3 stars in light side. I've set up also our 3 phases of what needs to get done. Players know to do their operations first. Hey, before anything else, fill out all of your operations. I want to remind my players that the battles are not as important as the platoons are, because in the past the reverse was kind of true. So I let everyone know, get that done, get that out of the way first. Second is obviously the battles, and you'll notice that not only do I say, hey, do your battles, I also let my players know what is affected by which platoons. So somebody looking at this at a cursory glance knows that they might want to wait for the dark side battles to platoons to complete in order to do their squad combats, but they can still do that awful fleet combat if they want to. They know that that neutral operation is only going to affect fleet combats. So they can go into their neutral and get that done pretty much right away if they'd like to. And the same thing for Lightspeed. They know that it really only affects your Jedi squads or squads that have multiple Jedi in them. So they can do as many of those battles as possible, really just isolating a few of them to save for later. However, as I mentioned before, something that I've been really trying to get my guild into the habit of is that most of these combats can be completed on manual or honestly on auto with the right teams, regardless of the platoons. I finish all of my combats pretty much right away on normal weeks. You'll notice that this week on my map I have not, and that's because we'll be doing that live a little bit later. And then the final thing is our deploys, and I try to have a deploy up immediately, and for us that's light side to 136 million. That 136 million is actually a very important figure. What that is taking the 3-star amount, okay, and we'll kind of take a look at what that 3-star amount is. So it's taking that 3-star amount, which is 248 million, subtracting, where is it? All of the platoons, okay? So assuming that none of the platoons are active yet, and then also assuming that everybody finishes every combat and wins. We don't expect that, but it just means that there will be absolutely no overage, right? That's the thing that we kind of want to avoid as a guild, is over deploying when combats will do the work for us. Later on in the day, we'll change those goals, but we're going to have players all over the world. We have people in Germany, we have people in France, we have people in Australia, we have people in the United States, all different time zones. We want people to be able to get some of their stuff done as quickly as possible. So that gives people an option to do all of their combats right away and then deploy if they need to deploy, so that they don't have to worry about the next 20 to 23 hours of the territory battles. Going back to Discord, that is what I believe to be the crux or the top or the most important thing that I do. Is every phase I add that day agenda so that everybody knows what's going on. Towards the end of the night, and territory battle starts for me at about 1 p.m. So sometime around 9 p.m. or 10 p.m., I also send an overnight instruction. Most of our officers are US based, which means there's very little that we can do from about 10 p.m. to like 6 a.m. when I wake up. Players who are international are kind of on their own in what to do. What happens if this over deploys? What happens if we meet our goal? So I've developed a first, next, last system for our deploys overnight, which kind of tells people, hey, for the example of day 1, you're going to do light side to 220 million. Once light side hits 220 million, you can continue doing combats there. We do want to max the planet, but stop deploying and go to neutral, and you want to take neutral to 220 million. We do ask people to tag us on Discord, but the reality is most of the time we are unavailable, and our guild knows you can take a rogue action during that time to follow the directions. All right. Typically, I find that we don't get to that last direction before I wake up, but it's nice that players have that option to be able to do that without having to worry. It has significantly changed the game for our territory battles because we do have a lot of players, even in the United States, who are parents and stay up later because they are hanging out or dealing with their family throughout the day. And you'll see that I do add some other goals here. Day 2, we go 0-3-3, so that means we don't want to star Geonosis at all. And you'll notice in that overnight instruction that won't be there. We just do a first and a last. One important thing to note, and you won't see it on my map right now, is that 4 days where we are planning to preload, I will also institute a hard stop amount. So when players do come to this map and they see first 220 million, instead they'll see something that says no star, hard stop, whatever the number is. Let's say it's 120 million. And what that means, and what players in our guild know that to mean, is that once that planet hits 120 million, I don't want deploys, I don't want operations, I don't want battles. I want absolutely nothing done on that planet. I want you to tag me, we're going to lock it down completely. On a hard stop day, and Geonosis is going to be a hard stop day. It's 148 million to hit that first star. We're going to set that hard stop to about 130 million. Okay, so about 18 million before that star. And what that number kind of represents is where myself and the other officers who are able to be around right around phase shift, we will walk that up in the end so that no accidents occur. It's really important that you set it fairly far off so that if somebody is deploying and two deploys tend to happen at the same time, that mistake isn't going to cost the guild any points or going to cost the guild, cause them to star something up. Right, so we like to set it about 15 to 20 million outside, and in that last half hour of a phase, myself, my other officers will communicate with each other and say, hey, I'm walking this up, wait for me, I'll let you know when I'm done walking up, and then you'll continue to walk that up after. That has helped us to make sure that mistakes don't happen. We don't want regular players walking things directly up to the line, because that's where heroes happen and you get into big mistakes. Another thing that you'll notice with Discord is that at the very end of a TV, and we'll scroll through here, we'll see all this cool stuff going on. At the very end of a TB, I always do a redux message, and that's basically things that I noticed throughout the TB. So for this specific TB that happened in May, and I chose this one just because there was a lot going on, there were a few notes that I wanted to give everybody. This was our first time unlocking Mandalore, so I wanted to give us a heads up on what we needed. We noticed that Zepho would be unlocking pretty soon, so it was really important for the guild to know what's going on with platoons for that. And then we did have a few participation issues with this TB, specifically because it was our first time with the bonus planets, and we were in a holding pattern where a lot of the days that combats were not as important, and just deploying was completely fine. And I wanted to kind of remind everybody that getting those things done as quickly as possible would really help myself and my TB partner Q to make sure that our lives were easier. Now, something that I don't think is going to be easily accessible, but we're going to try to find this, is after a phase... Oh, look at that. Nope, that's not it. So after a phase changes, we give people about 4 to 5 hours before we start tagging them, and Q does a lot of our tagging for different phases. We don't really need to do it in the first couple of days anymore, where after a couple of hours he will send out targeted messages, and these targeted messages are, instead of typing in @Mandalorian, hey, everybody get your platoons in, which is annoying and it doesn't help anybody, it's a list of all of the characters that are not currently platooned and the players that have those characters. Hot Utilities does have a feature for this to make life easier, and I do have access to it, and I do use it when I'm on. Q just happens to be on during times when I'm not, and he unfortunately does not have that same access, and he ends up having to do these things manually. However, I know on his end, he has spreadsheets to make his life easier so that he can see very quickly which players have which characters. In the event that you're not building out those spreadsheets, something that is really useful here is actually just .gg, right? And before I had Hot Utils, what I would do is head over to the Units tab for your guild. Which always takes a long time to load. There we go. Whichever character we need, let's just say it's Sortie. 49 people with Sortie. Somebody doesn't have Leviathan. Interesting. We'll look at the relic levels. We can sort over here. Let's say we need a level, a relic 9, and I know Keegan and Targel have it, so I am able to go into the game, tag just those two specific people. Hey, you need to get these platoons in as soon as possible. It is a helpful, very free tool for players where that is the thing that's kind of holding you back, right? Feeling like the tools that people are paying for are not something that you can afford right now. Work smart, not hard. If, again, you don't have hot utils, something that I used before I had access to it is TB planning sheets. All right, you'll notice I built this towards the beginning of Rise of the Empire. It is not up to date. I don't use it anymore, not because of hot utils, but because after developing a feeling for knowing how to do things, it is much easier for me to just estimate. But essentially, this allows me to input the information for the combats and the platoons for each phase and very quickly see where that bottom hold amount is. Right? And I believe I set it to negative 20 million at a glance. And as I change these numbers, right, to how many are completed, those numbers on the right will change. So if I'm doing my overnight instructions, I will be able to look at that super fast, do this in 5 minutes, get a message out. Now, again, because I've been doing this a long time and because I have a pretty good feel for it, I don't use sheets like this anymore. I honestly, don't tell my guild, just copy and paste my last week's message, which tends to be pretty much correct for in all situations. So to kind of recap, the most important thing that you can do as a TB officer is really just communicate with your guild the expectations and what needs to be done. The sooner that you can get that information out to your players, the better, because it's going to allow them to get things done as quickly as possible. Once again, unlike with LSGO and unlike with Hoth before that, when that was actually a challenging bit of content, a lot of the times the platoons are not as important in Rise of the Empire for being able to get combats done. However, they are incredibly important to earning stars. So I do try to tell my guild, especially it being at 580 million, we have a lot of options available to us. Get those battles done literally ASAP. Don't worry, don't wait. We know which planets those platoons can make or break, and oftentimes it's actually the fleet battles. But really, just on the light side, neutral fleet battles are pretty much relatively easy. Dark side battles are a shit show, and we don't stress them. And light side ones typically need to be run on manual and are extremely helped by the platoons that work with them. Now, one thing that I do want to talk about before we end is preloading territories. So that's something that we are going to be doing in day 2. Basically, we will 3-star Felicia, we will 3-star Braca, and we will 0-star Geonosis. And the reason that we're going to 0-star Geonosis on purpose is that if we 1 or 2-star it, the next planet is harder. And if we continually get harder and harder, we're going to end up with less stars overall than we would if we just held back. So tomorrow, or I guess later today, when we do Geonosis and we hold it just before that 148 million, on day 3, we'll be able to 3-star this, not have to worry about the platoons at all. They'll already be done, and get that out of the way as quickly as possible to a full 3-star for more overall stars. One other thing that you can do, and we don't do this on Geonosis because at this level we don't have to worry about the GP, but we do have to do this on day 5 when we are holding back on Kessel, we are holding back on Haven class, and Actually, we're finishing Lothal now. But one thing that we do here is we actually tell people not to fill platoons. Because we have enough GP to get these planets very close to their 235 million, we will actually tell people, hey, get the platoons to 13 of 15. And we say 13 of 15 again because that 14 of 15, what ends up happening is 2 people hit them at the same time and 1 will complete. We get them as close as possible so that on day 6, each of those planets only needs 1 or 2 platoons done, and we get a huge influx of GP really, really quickly, which makes our day 6 really, really simple. So that's one thing as an officer you're going to want to assess. Essentially, if you can get the planets you need to get to right before their goal without platoons, you might want to consider holding back finishing those platoons until the next day. If you can't get it close without platoons, there is no harm in finishing them. It's not going to hurt you at all. It's not going to be wasted GP. A lot of the times on day 5, I'll start to see, especially if we're running Mandalore, that we will have a little bit of extra now that we're doing 4 days. And towards those last 12 hours, I'll tell people, if you can finish this to 2 of 6, or you can finish this to 3 of 6, that's okay right now. Basically, what you want to do is train your guild to be able to know exactly what's happening and to wait for your commands, but at the same time be able to think for themselves. And I know that that doesn't make a lot of sense, but it really does come back to these messages that do get sent out literally every day. The last thing that I want to kind of point out here, though, is that if we are preloading battles, I really try to hold off on sending my day message until literally exactly after the phase starts. Now, with day 1 into day 2, we max those battles and I have no fear. So once we hit 3 stars and everything, I'm going to send out that phase 2 message pretty much right away. But I don't want to confuse players who might have a busy workday, who are rushing around, there are meetings all morning, they see a day 3 message, they think that they can do something like deploy, and they go in and cause us to inadvertently get a star that we don't want to get. So on days where those types of things are really important, I will queue the message up in Discord ahead of time in my message bar. I'll leave it there until about 1 to 1:05, and I'll send it afterwards so that there is no way that we can screw things up. The last thing that I want to talk about, and I haven't, well, actually second to last thing that I want to talk about, and I haven't had to do this in a while, is understanding that mistakes do happen. We have had people play the hero before and cause us to lose a star. We have had people over deploy to things. It happens, I get it. It really isn't a big deal. What I like to do is reach out to those people privately. I don't get mad at them. I don't yell at them. I don't call them names. It's just a very quick, hey, so-and-so, here's what happened. No big deal. Don't worry about it. Here's why we do things a certain way. Here's what I'd like you to do next time so that everybody can maximize their reward. In my experience, reaching out to people in that way and in a respectful way is really an important part of being respected as an officer, being respected as a person within the game, and getting people to do exactly what you want them to do. The final thing that I want to talk about is expectations set for your guild. One thing that's really unfortunate, and we do have to decide again whether you want to be a casual guild, a casual competitive guild, or a competitive guild, but as an officer, you are responsible for the rewards of 50 people. And as much as I love all of the people that I play with, the reality is that if we don't keep people honest and we don't keep people doing their activities, we are hurting the rest of the guild. And while that might not matter in the short term, what will end up happening is in the long term, people will leave when they get frustrated with you. So it is important to talk as a guild. It is important to talk as officers, see which players are underperforming what they should be performing, reaching out to them, finding out why, seeing if it's a short-term issue. Maybe something happened in their life. Maybe they're dealing with something. No big deal. We can handle those types of things. Maybe they went on vacation. We have a lot of people going on a vacation this week. We get it. It's the summer. No, not a problem at all. Or seeing if it's a long-term problem where we're going to have to eventually talk about removing those people. I hate the idea of doing it. I hate saying goodbye to people. But the reality is that if you don't call that bottom end every once in a while, other players are going to get frustrated seeing people not doing anything, and it is going to cause them to leave. All right, so to recap here, as a Territory Battles officer, a lot of time is spent. Communication is the most important thing. And make sure to stay on top of things. Actually, one last thing that I do want to add that I forgot to mention before. My phase, again, it starts at about 1 p.m. and I end up waking up at 6 a.m. every morning. Now, I don't do this in phase 1 because we are really good at phase 1. But starting at about 7 in the morning, every hour I will go in to Discord, and I'll use hot utils to TB deployments, right, and tell it to notify true, and I'll run this command, and basically what it will do is hot utils will run a report. It will tag every single player that has not deployed yet, and it'll just remind them to get their things done. We also have, once again, my other partner, Q. You'll see up here, he does the same thing. Unfortunately, he does not have hot utils. He likes to make his messages a little bit more funny. It's just a breakdown of what needs to get done from each person, and he'll do that in my stead. It is summer for me. I am a teacher. I can't always get on from 8 a.m. to about noon, so he'll take care of it during that time, and I'll try to run initial 1 or 2 reports. We'll try to do that every hour to every hour and a half, and I know that can be annoying, but we do it this way so that only the players who are not deployed are seeing the message instead of the guild being constantly spammed. So, with that said, I really hope this helps. I am reachable on Discord. Hit me up, let me know. I'm happy to talk to people about specific strategies. That in itself requires a lot of research. There are tools that will help you with that. I believe Hot Utils has things to help you with that as well. But once again, the goal is communication. I hope everybody has a great day and a good TV week. Peace out.